So please make sure your phones are quiet so we don't get interrupted, and join me in welcoming Miggs.
Well, thank you, Marta, and thanks to the library for hosting this, and thank you all for coming. This is really more than overwhelming because this is all new to me. I'd also like to thank some people, some of which who are here, that helped, were very supportive of the book. This is my periodontist. And you need to thank him, or else I'd be talking here with false teeth. But he bought 100 books. So anyway, I'm thanking the big three here for their support. Except for a few ransom notes I wrote in college, I've never written anything else, and there's no future in ransom notes, so I gave that up. So this is my first venture, and I'll explain how it came about. But I never set out to, write a book. I just did something therapeutic for myself. There's a lot of writers. There's writers here in the audience. I reckon people that really know what they're doing, and whether they're published or not, it doesn't matter. But they're people that are serious writers, and I have a huge new appreciation of what they do, because that's really not what I did. This picture here is to represent, to me, what these kind of books are, whether they're published or not. They're feasts, for the mind and the heart, and a lot goes into it. And I have a huge appreciation for, there's characters and plot and footnotes and tables of contents and indexes, and anyway, there's a lot that goes into a real book, and to me, it's a feast. And this is my book, an after-dinner mint. But after-dinner mints can be refreshing, and I think they stimulate the appetite maybe for something, for dessert or something better, and open up the airways maybe for new ideas. So it's not a bad thing. It's just I need to put my book in perspective in the literary landscape. I have no delusions about what it is. Now, I'm relatively new to this. I'm very new to this, and I don't mean to presume that I know a lot now about publishing, but I do have a cautionary note to any aspiring writers out there. Two cautionary notes. One is the rejection letter, which, I don't know if anybody's ever prepared for the rejection letter. It turns out that I hadn't really remembered this, but I looked through some files, and I found out that this book was written 18 years ago, but I found out I'd actually sent this to Simon & Schuster, and this is what I got back. The What If Book of Questions is very cute, but I think it's also very small. So, just be careful what, just venture out into that world of. By the way, I'm not expecting a call. This is my little crib sheet, and it's a remote control for the slides. So I'm not sitting here waiting for waiting for Simon & Schuster to call, because that's not going to happen. Okay, the next cautionary note. There's only just one more, and there's a picture, and the picture will sort of say it all. And I was going to say, if there's young children in here, you may want to take them outside. You may want to look through closed hands. There's nothing explicit, but it's kind of disturbing. And this is all part of being a new author. Now, Stu Leonard, I have to say, is the most amazing, generous person, and he invited me. I would never think, why would I bother Stu Leonard with this? But he said, I've read your book, and I think I'd like to introduce it to my customers, and would you come do a book signing in my store, which I did last month, and my book was up on this big jumbotron outside. It was really amazing. But there was a caveat to all this. Here's the cow suit. And supposedly, everybody that's ever promoted anything in his store has to wear the cow suit. So I stand alongside. So I stand alongside, Herman Melville and Jane Austen and Ernest Hemingway, and we've all worn the cow suit. So, okay, this book was written as a therapy for myself during counseling for my divorce. So this is my wedding picture it's my brother on the left, my now ex, me and her bridesmaid. And this has nothing to do with her, and has nothing to do. Divorce is not easy on anybody, so it doesn't matter what happened or who did what or whatever. It's just divorce is not easy for anybody. So we went to couples therapy, and then we did our own thing. And I found out that, when you're in a crisis, or I was in, you tend to revert, I think, to, the way a kid goes through something unsettling, like goes to camp for the first time, and they get, nervous. Their whole world is changing, and of course the whole world revolves around them. It's like, what if I don't make any friends? And what if I don't have enough money for the store? And what if I don't like the food? And what if I don't like my counselor? And what if I don't like my bunkmate? And what if? These are the kind of fears. Well, when I went to counseling, I sort of brought the same fears, adult things to counseling, like what if I don't like the food? And what if I don't have enough money for the store? And anyway, so the counselor sort of gave me a homework assignment and said, well, write all these down. They become overwhelming, when you let them fester and build up, and, they're all approachable and they can all be dealt with. So write them down and we'll talk about them. And, we kind of explored, like, okay, there's always options, no matter what happens, there's options. And there's consequences to options, but you have to evaluate them. I could, at this moment, drop everything and run out the door and get in the car and go to the airport and fly to Paris if I but there's consequences to that. But I could do it. I mean, and to explore kind of the extremes are kind of fun. It's like, for me, it was a fun exercise, to explore, what if I did that wild thing, that weird thing, and then you sort of come back to reality. But it frees you up. It freed me up to explore these wilder kind of options and realizing that anything was possible. And what I took away, the big thing I took away from the therapy, and I think we all probably know this already, is that every disappointment I'd ever known, I could attribute to me imposing my expectations or definitions on myself, on other people, on the weather, on a meal, on a movie, and also accepting the definitions that the world had put on me. And it seems weird, but if you actually erased all your expectations, I'm not saying this is possible, but if you could erase every expectation you had about anything, like I'm going to spend $100 on a great meal and have a great meal at this restaurant. If you just erased all those kind of expectations and definitions, like of what a great meal is or what value you're getting for your money, I don't think anybody would ever be unhappy. There'd be no reason to be unhappy. Now, I'm not saying that's achievable, but this was, again, the extreme, like going to Paris, right now. It's like, what if? So I decided to, in preparation for this, for my notes, again, I'd never attempted to write a book, but I wanted to sort of, part of the healing process for me. So I thought I'd review all these kind of signature moments in my life that had defined me, and then work backwards to try to shed some of these things that weren't helpful. And the first one that I think I can safely say is that we all share, I hope, is birth. Is there anyone here who hasn't been born? Show of hands. Okay, so we all agree on it. We've all been born. We all share this one universal, common experience. So that's me, like an hour old, I guess. But right off the bat, immediately you're born. No, I'm not saying any of this. This is all part of life. But you're either a boy or a girl, or and eventually you might find out you're a boy in a girl's body, or a girl in a boy's body. You're dressed a certain way. You're playing with certain people. You're treated a certain way, you have certain toys, all these things, these are all natural things, but they start to, define who you are. And backwards too, and then you learn to define the world around you by the same token, the same. Another signature thing, a signature event is school. Can you pick me out of there? Or any of you in there? I don't know, it's possible. I don't know. Oh well, I'm in the upper left corner. But school is naturally, first of all, the ultimate definition put on you is what kind of student you are. An A student, a B student, a D student, an F student, plays well with others, doesn't play well, lives up to your potential, doesn't live up to your potential, rough houses, easygoing, this, that, and the other thing. So that's all part of, school is one of those signature events. And family. You're an older brother, you're a younger brother, the interaction with the family, how you're treated. I was told from the moment I could understand English that I was shy. And that, I think, defined my entire life. I don't know why, I'm not blaming, I'm not saying that was a bad thing for them to do, I don't know, but that just became the coat I wore forever. Athletics can be a big, or a lack of athletics. I never played football. My father liked to dress me up, and he was an artist, an artist and an illustrator and a photographer. So he liked to dress my brother and I up first of all for jobs, because he would render them and you draw from them. But he also just for the fun of it. So I never played sports. I was terrible. That and the lack of athletics can define you in certain ways, and not being athletic. The first time I ever went out to recess to play, and they said, okay, you go out to left field. I didn't even know what that was. I had no idea what left field was, what it meant, where it was. So that's all part of it. Now, none of this is in chronological order, but this was right after college in the 60s. So the era that you live in obviously defines you, and you define people around you and what you're into. And I was starting to do this crazy art and pop art. Andy Warhol happened to go to Carnegie Tech as well, many years before me, but I was influenced by he was just coming out as a pop artist around the time I graduated. So yeah, you're defined by the look of your peers and the whole scene going around. Parenthood is a big factor and works both ways. Your kid, you sort of, it's a reflection. Your kid can tell you who you are, who you think who you really are. Actually, if you really want to know who you are, your kid's there to let you know. And you feel a certain way based on, just being a parent, if you're a parent, or not being a parent. That's all part of, again, the shaping of a person. The military. So, I wasn't going to tell you my age, but I did serve in the Revolutionary War. It's true. And the military obviously could have a profound effect on somebody, and not going into the military. Possessions, we can be defined by possessions. This is not my car, as Bill Scheffler can attest. This is Bob, what's his name? Bob, he's a photographer too. I can't remember his last name. Anyway, he was at the Concourse d'Elegance, and he had 2 cars, and he asked me to drive his XKE home. I'd never been in such a car. I couldn't believe he was just letting me. I said, can you give me instructions? He said, no, you just drive and follow me. Just go, it was unbelievable, but like being in a rocket ship. But possessions, it's always occurred to me, and part of this is in the book, what is the whole thing of owning something is really weird, because even if I own that car, and once I get out and go home and go to bed, what makes me own that still, ownership is a weird concept, and we get hung up sometimes on owning things, wanting things, and it's kind of an illusion, I think, in a way. Because sitting in that car, I was as much of an owner of that car in that experience. Religion, obviously. This was in Key West. My explain that, and lack of religion, or whatever, any shade in between. Another memory, when I was about 8 years old, my next door neighbor asked me if I believed in either God or Jesus or whatever, and my family was not formally religious. We didn't really, again, like, I knew nothing about baseball, I knew nothing about religion either. I mean, we weren't told a whole lot about anything. And I said, I think I told him, I don't know. And he said, well, then you're going to burn in hell. This is one 8-year-old to another. That stays with you, you know. Pets, like wonderful corgi I had. Pets are like, you know, the unconditional love. I mean, that's certainly about the best you can do. Our workplace, that's where I work alone. That's my, you know, I come in there and that's sort of who I am. I mean, that's me in that room. You know, sometimes I'm not sure who I am. Like here, it's very bizarre, you know, to be standing. I've been other places, but that's my comfort zone. Sort of the inside of my brain splattered all over the walls, and pictures and images. And
who is that, Patty Hearst up on the wall?
Yeah, that was a cover I did for a magazine of Patty Hearst, a former, is she still in Westport or not? She was a Westport resident, okay.
We don't talk about that.
Oh, okay. Actually, our kids went to nursery school together, and I never had the nerve, I always wanted her to sign that, and I never had the nerve to show it to her. I don't know why. I thought she'd be upset or something, that I had something to do with portraying her that way. The company you keep can have a big influence. I don't keep company with these people. This is a once-a-year event, but again, people have images, impressions of people, and define people by what they do and what they look like. How other people see you. A friend of mine, Paul Jones, is a pinhole photographer, and he took a pinhole camera. We exchanged portraits, and I did one of him, and he did one of me down at the beach. And, you know, that's the way he saw me. I think I learned more about myself from this picture than I have from... Here's another universal thing I think we can all... Our devices define us, can define us. Okay, this next one is probably the most, aside from my son and marriage, whatnot, the most defining moment of my life. Son Miggs arrested and convicted. I was in London in 1965, and I was arrested and sent to, well, I was sent to Scotland Yard to get fingerprinted, and spent the night at Scotland Yard. I had no idea how long. This had nothing to do with drugs. I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. The next morning, I figured I'm going to be let go now. I'm an American, you know, and I'm telling people I'm an American. So they woke me up at 3 in the morning, let me call the embassy. Of course, nobody's there. The next morning, we're thrown in a van with some other people that were arrested with me, and we're shackled in these little cages, and we were driven 50 miles outside of London to a place called Ashford, and it was a prison. And I had no idea if I was going to be there for 10 minutes or 10 years, and it turned out to be a month. But now at the time, this was, you know, the most horrible thing that could have happened to me. I'm thinking, I've ruined my entire life, my future, I'm ashamed, it's guilt, it's all that stuff. Well, it turns out this, and the way things are, this might have been the best, you know, the greatest gift, you know, that I was ever given. And that gave me a perspective. You'll see in the book, part of is we have these absolute things that we have to define things as good, bad, ugly, pretty, black, white, hot, cold, gift, not a gift. I think, you know, everything's really a gift. They don't always come when they're expected, and they're not always appreciated when they're there, but this was a huge gift. It just took a while to appreciate it. This was a self-portrait I did of myself the day I was released from jail. I was in a rooming house, and that gives you some idea of how I felt at the time. Okay, so here's some pages from the book for those of you who don't know what the hell I've been talking about. So each page, each spread in the book, you know, there's side-by-side pages, and there's one Victorian illustration on the right, which I didn't do, but they're public domain, called clip art, Dover Books, whatever. And I just like the charm of it. When I did this thing, again, I did this for myself as kind of a little handbook, you know, that I could just remind myself of what the process I went through and keep looking at it and reminding myself, and, you know, like we do for any way we reread other books or other articles. So what if the most important moment in your life is this one? Can you handle the power it gives you to choose how you will spend the next one? And that sometimes was, a hard lesson to learn, that we do have this infinite power every moment. We don't always have to go there, we can go there. And again, there's consequences, but what if someone else has everything you think you need to be happy? How close do you have to be to these things to be content? Now that sort of goes back to the car thing. Do I have to have a piece of paper in my hand that says I own that car? I may not be in it, 99% of my life. So when I am in it, or own anything, or pick up anything, or enjoy something, again, I don't have an answer. That's why these are all questions. But there's the illusion of ownership and the illusion of pleasure you get from owning something versus just enjoying it. I mean, if you ever sat at the beach and looked up and heard the water and saw the sky, and you could be the richest person in the world, or a monarch or something, living in a lavish estate, and you've got the same incredible view. And they don't own it, you don't own it. What if your thoughts and values suddenly appeared as pictures all over your body? Would you stay inside or go to the beach? So this is sort of a test myself of, the shame I felt from being arrested and all that stuff. And my father used to say, and it sounded so silly when he said it, but he said, there's no shame in being a decent person. And so this is sort of a test, like, am I being a decent, if I had to wear a suit with all this stuff, would I do it? Could I go outside? And here's another thing about ownership and value and the things we hang on to, these definitions that sort of restrict us. What if you were to pay $50 for a pair of shoes and a tomato together? Does your wallet really care if the shoes were $1 and the tomato was $49? We have this immediate thing. I have to get value. I give you a book and you give me $10, but does that, the accounting really is spread over your entire life. We spend money every day, and we get stuff every day, and why do we have to localize it, or, these are the things I've asked myself. Why do we have to be so fussy about what's worth what? Money comes out, the money comes in, services come in, go out. What if you're dreaming now? Is there anything you can't do? Why wait for a dream? So, same kind of idea of being able to envision a better moment. What if you measured the success of each day by what you gave instead of what you got? Has the meter moved yet? Now this just is simply turning the cliche of, it's better to give than to receive, and turning it into a visual thing where what if you had a meter that just, what would it look like if you had a meter that registered those things? What if this page doesn't meet your expectations? What do your expectations have to do with what this page wants to look like? So that really maybe sums up the whole book in a way. I deliberately changed the font, made the whole thing very dissimilar from everything else. What if the next person you meet has lost all faith in humanity? Would they feel differently if humanity was you? Again, these are sort of resulting from personal questions. I asked myself, but I wanted to try to make them more universal. But
It's pretty profound.
well, thanks. Well, it's it's really just, these are mirrors, I think, for all of us. They're just, and someone said, why don't you write a book of answers? Well, if I could do that, I would be king of Westport. But somebody did, but people have been writing me, some people have emailed us, and maybe we can do it if we have time later for your suggestion. Someone wrote me a great one. They said, what if God had a God? And usually a what if question and then a follow-up. So what if God had a God? What would he be like? What would God's God do or be? Anyway, it's just, again, imponderable. She, yes, I'm sorry. What if you're a bird that didn't believe in water? Should fish stop swimming? That kind of speaks for itself. And that came from staring at a bird feeder outside my house and just saying, these birds, they don't sort of care. They're not judging me, and I'm not judging them. And what if you look at every dream, sneeze, blister, person, accident, and cloud as a gift? What could you possibly want for your birthday? Some woman, an artist, actually, I don't think she'd mind me telling her name is Janet Slom. She's a local artist, but she comes from South Africa, and she told me this story of her growing up in South Africa, and I guess her parents had a farm, and it either burned down, this is a long time ago, like 10 or 15 years ago, she told this story, and I mean, I wrote the book before I heard this story, but it made this all the more powerful for me. It was like, so their farm burned down, or was destroyed in a storm, whatever was destroyed, and the father took them all and said, come on, everybody get in the car. And they said, where are we going? And he goes, you'll see. So he drove them to like the best restaurant in their community in South Africa. And we're gonna have dinner to celebrate. And they were, what? Celebrate? Our house just burned to the ground. What are we celebrating? And he said, it's a gift. We're celebrating, it's a gift. And I mean, it seems, again, hard to conceive, but gifts don't always pay off the same day or the next day. And you know, as tragic as that was, and as tragic as things happen every day to all of us, I think, you know, there's gifts built in there somewhere. Eventually, this sort of says the same thing. What if you come across a dark, empty page in your life? Can you find all the possibilities hiding there? What if the questions stop? Where will the answers come from? And what if you write the next page? So that's it. Thank you. Good.